Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now this video is a little bit of a unique one. This is going to be my first try at anime reviews, and I'm taking on a show which is going to be ending in this year, which is going to have a finale and it will never ever restart again. So I'm actually going to be touching on Attack on Titan. Now the reason for it is I've seen a lot of people doing these contents for the show, and there's point of views that I haven't seen people talk about, things that people aren't grasping from what I can see in the show. And I thought it would be worthwhile for me to just put out that little point of view into the community. So here's the whole thing. Attack on Titan is a real amazing story, and I'm going to discuss it. And you might get 2 videos a week from me on anime total. You're not going to get it daily. Obviously, I'm more of a gaming channel, and that's where I want to focus, and I want to stay focused on gaming. So let's just get started with exactly what I've got to say. So I'm going to review the entire show today. It's going to be about a 15-minute video. I'm hoping that it cuts off around that point. And I'm going to review it from the start to where it is right now with just a basic review. So in the start, we find out that there's this island with people on it who are the last survivors of humanity. And they are staying inside here to protect themselves against these big man-eating monsters called Titans. Now, they have been inside these walls for 100 years as the last survivors of mankind. And that's all that they have. We know that they had a formation of warriors who were called the Scouts, who went in front, tried to win every battle, tried to gain them honor, tried to expand their land a little bit more, to give them more sight onto what's going on, to clear out the monsters from the world. And with all of that being said, that is all that we do actually know about their story at that point in the start. Then we get to the point where the first wall is broken in the Shiganshina district, and Shiganshina is actually what you would call a sentry point. It's an outlier because it sits outside the main wall of the city, and it helps them get these points where they know where the Titans are gathering. Because there's people inside it and they want to eat people, the walls are high, they're protected, and people will sit inside and they won't be eaten by the Titans. So the Titans will gather on those areas instead of going to places where they can't watch them. And they did this and they got their way, and the Titans formed around these places because they want to get into the cities. And eventually it moves on beyond this point where there's an attack on the city, and the Colossal Titan, a huge Titan which is bigger than most Titans they've seen in their lives, suddenly breaks down the front wall to their city. Now this is where the story actually begins, and where things start to take a little bit of a heavier turn for the tone of the story. Now, it isn't so simple as to say that things are drastic and bad and, things are going out of control rapidly. None of that has started to happen. Things are just starting to go wrong. The attack hits, it breaks down their defense against these monsters. The monsters are now getting into their cities and they start eating them, and they finally lost the outlier. The outlier is there for that particular purpose in case anything like this ever happened. Now, they get through the outlier, and the next thing which happens is even more shocking and more startling to these people, because the next thing which happens is another monster shows up, an armored Titan, one which is more resistant. They can't stun it or slow it down. It just hurtles right through the wall, and this allows the outside Titans to just flood the city and flow right through. Now, with all of this being pushed through, it makes a lot of things very difficult for the survivors of humanity within that particular region, because they now have to fight these monsters, and they're losing a big portion of their survival. They're losing one whole district. Now it's broken up into 3 wall districts, and the first one is now gone, and they're now living on just those 2 remainder districts, and there's a lot of things going on within them. Now, you have to understand that the story isn't a very easy, clean cut story. There's a lot of complex things which are going into it, which you will get the explanation of as we go further into it. So, at this point, these attacks happen, a lot of things happen, people died, they lost their main farming land, they lost a lot of it, and they were forced to take all their refugees and put them into the last 2 walls, meaning they lost a lot of land, they lost a lot of their capability. The Titans don't need to eat people to survive, they just survive. And that is what scares them even more. They don't understand what's the motive behind the enemy. Because if you can understand your enemy's motive, you can try and find ways around them. They just have the instinct to kill. So they start to train up a new regiment of soldiers. They do a lot of things in between. They have a genocide which they purposefully wipe a lot of their population with. And these are all the things that were done to prolong the death of humanity for them. So they had a smaller population, it was more manageable, all of these things, things that we don't think of every day. A disaster where we only have limited resources. So they do that, and then eventually they all die. Then the kids become soldiers. We go through the whole training process where they brutally mind wipe them so that they can be made blank to become very obedient, very good soldiers. And that is as far as we go into that part. Then they finally qualify and they're on the wall and they're patrolling and they're looking out for any kind of suspicious behavior. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes the Colossal Titan again, and it just busts through the wall on the outer region, on these outliers, and this whole nightmare is starting all over again. Now, they immediately deploy several lines of defense into this region with immediate effect to try and slow down this disaster which had happened before. And immediately, the first thing which happens is we get our protagonist jumping into one of the formations in their military formation. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about it, but his little squad ends up getting eaten. And he ends up saving his friend by sacrificing himself and allowing one of these monsters to actually swallow him. And he fights from within, and that's the last that we see. He is fighting and he got swallowed. Then we know that the whole city is overrun. They're not getting the evacuation in time. They're losing tons of soldiers. There's a lot of risk involved in everything that's going on. And finally, they get a break. They get a break, and this Titan who's going berserk starts helping them. Little do they know that's their friend, one of the three main protagonists, who I haven't discussed as yet, which I will get into as soon as the show gets done. And this Titan attacks the other Titans, and it's helping them gain some foothold. And finally, when they get their escape en route, the Titan is finally killed. It just drops dead all of a sudden, and out of the back of its neck comes out the main protagonist. Now, the main protagonist is called Eren Yeager, and his best friend is Armin Arlade, who's also one of the main protagonists, and the last is Mikasa Ackerman, who's the third of the three main protagonists. So they form this whole basis behind everything that's being done. He does everything for the sake of his friends, for the sake of his little family. And through this here, we understand a lot of things, that there's a complex relationship between them. We know that there's a history between Eren and Mikasa. This here becomes very important later down in the story, like in the current progression of things. You'll understand it at a later point of view, but the show is very, very twisted. It shows you a lot of bad things, and you're seeing it only from one point of view, so you only see the good in it. And it's only later, when you see things turn around in the next few seasons, that things start to become more confusing. You don't understand where to stand. So here's what happens next. Next, what happens is there's this massive fight that happens in the city to try and reclaim it, because they need to reclaim that outlier so that they have that defense again, so that there isn't just this chance of the wall caving in and they have to protect only in one wall and the outliers on that last wall. So they go for it and they fight, and all of a sudden they win. They win, everything is going their way. They've got their progression into the next part of this entire massive problematic situation, and they make their first victory ever. In the process, the Scout Regiment arrives, which is their forward fighters who fight against the monsters all the time. They're more experienced than everybody else, and they help to clean up the city. So once the city is cleaned up, because there's not that many inside, they have it sealed up with a boulder, and the Titans can't push it out of the way. So they have that first area safe. Everything is now made up around this entire situation. Things are progressing slowly and moving forward with a lot of possibilities. Things then go on to the next stage of things, where they now have Eren in custody. They don't know what to do with him. Some want to kill him, some want to use someone to experiment on him to see whether all Titans are exactly the same or whether there's something special about it. So they want to know what's so special about the Titans, why they exist the way they exist. And it's an understandable thing. These are the monsters that they're fighting, so they want to know more about them. And finally, things start to clear up. We get answers at long last. And they start training with Eren, and they find out that you have to have motivation to transform, and you're one of those transforming Titans, and you have to have a clear set goal path. Now, they move on from this year to the next major event, where they finally take an expedition out of the city. Now, this year will lead us up to the end of season 1. So they take an expedition out of the city to go and reclaim for humanity. And as they're moving around, they just end up with this massive assault from Titans, and they don't understand what's going on. And then they find their first ever shifter Titan from the enemy side, and then they realize that there's two sides. There's people who are for the survival of their humanity, and there's people fighting against them. But they still don't understand the enemy. They don't understand the enemy's motives, what they're doing there, why are they fighting them. And this is where things take the next turn. They figure out who the enemy is because of key elements within the fight. They analyze it, and they finally get inside. This is where the big fight happens in one of their more protected areas, inside a safe area, and they end up killing a lot of people. But it was a necessary fight because this one individual was capable of wiping out all of humanity within the cities. So they do this here, they defend the people, and they finally make some progression because they catch this Titan. She is Annie Leonhardt. So she's actually put into custody. They lock her inside the city. She doesn't get out much, and basically that's how it goes. She's inside a chrysalis, basically, so she's safe inside it. They can't break it, and they lock her away, and that's the end of it. That's all that we know that happens to Annie. Then we go on to the second season. Now, this is where things start to escalate very, very quickly. All of a sudden, there's an attack within the walls. It's been 4 years from the first attack on Shiganshina, where the original protagonists lived, where they started, and things are now progressing really crazily. This attack happens inside the wall. There's no breach. None of the outliers are broken. There's no breaks in the wall, and they find the enemy inside. They fight the enemy, and they finally just get away with the nick of, by the skin of their teeth. They fight the enemy, and the enemy has some kind of weird titans they've never seen before, titans who move at night. Now, that's a basic piece of information. Titans only move during the day. For some reason, they're active in the daylight and they're docile at night. So they figure out all of these sequences, and they figure out a whole lot of things about the titans in the process, and they find out that there's a lot of secrets within the walls that they're living in. And this is where things start to escalate again, and they're now on this whole chase to catch one of the members of their own team to keep them safe, because they might know more than they know about the entire situation. They push forward with these ideas, and that leads us all the way to the point where they have the fight for the castle. Now, at this point, things are already really twisted, and they fight for the castle. They make a play, and they win their castle fight. So that's the end of it. First part of the war has started and ended. That's where it is. But things aren't yet over. Things are about to get even more crazy. So finally, they save their recruits from this massive, deadly fate that they were about to face off against, and they pull them into the safety onto the walls, because Titans generally can't get up onto the walls. And as they're on the wall, they were talking about things before they even arrived, because remember, they first caught that first Titan, and they're like, what if the other two, the special Titans who arrived, are just like those two? They transformers. They can transform. And now they're thinking to themselves, oh no, this might be a reality of the situation. What do we do? At this very point, things go crazy. They go over the rails, out of control, and they're now thinking of how can they combat against these special Titans who they've never seen and they don't know about. And as they're talking about this, basically they're running through this in the recap, we see that there's 2 of them who are suspected. 3 of them are said to be from the same region. They're using somebody else's story to, feign their innocence. And they get a hold of it, And as they're talking, it's two of their most trusted members, two of the most brotherly members from the entire corporation, from their entire regiment, and it hurts them so deeply. And there's a whole lot of emotion involved in it, and we get into this fight. And this fight is the Titans again are fighting with each other. So we find out that these two, Bertold Hoover and Rainer, are both their enemies. They've been sleeping in the same barracks as them. They've been sharing the same food. That's how it goes. And I'm forgetting Rainer's second name. Unfortunately, I'll remember it as I go through it on a rerun, and I'll discuss it properly in the episode. But anyway, they now have this confrontation with them. They have a fight, and Eren ends up losing the fight because they play him into a trap. And when he is lost in this way, they grab him and they start to run, because that previous attack was done by their war chief, the Beast Titan, another one of the Titans. And they're now moving towards it. Now, this is all the information that they know. As they start appearing, there's Titans who are coming into knowledge. And I said there was another surprise on the way to the wall. They found a third Titan. So, yeah, another Titan who they didn't understand. And they don't understand where the loyalties lie, because she isn't like the others. She's different. And they progress from this point, and they move forward, and they're moving towards a different goal altogether. And they end up fighting, and they end up getting pulled into a forest. Now, this is all the way to the halfway point of the season. Now, the scouts go in to go and reclaim their only defense, Eren. So they run in this massive formation. They fight the two shifters, and the third shifter is helping them. And as they do this here, they finally get Eren loose. Eren gets away from his captors, and he can't transform yet because they have this waiting time between each transformation till their body heals. Once their body heals, they can transform again. And as he does this, he finds this other Titan coming to attack him, the one that has been the bane of his nightmares, the one that ate his mother. And he goes to punch it, and as he touches it, he just gains his control to control Titans. And once he does this here, we now understand a little bit more about what's going on. We know that there's a particular Titan that they were after, the Founding Titan. Everything is now progressing at a rapid rate. The two of them start to run, but they're about to be overrun by Titans. And the third shifter who we were talking about, who I'll explain later, her name is Amir, she runs in to go and help them. She is going to save them because she cost them a lot with her choices in that moment. And the scouts fall back into the city. They fall to where they want to go. And with all of this, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of crazy ideas coming out around the sides. We find out that it's Eren's brother who's on the other side, the Beast Titan. And we find out that inside that the military police are now leading this charge against taking Eren, because they want the royal family to eat Eren to gain the powers again of the Founding Titan. Now we go through this whole process of politics, and this is where things get really twisted. It's very important for the later part of the story, but right now, since we don't know everything, we know that the military and everybody are all conspiring to do things. They've been hiding things from the people, all the bad things that they're doing, and they call it for their own good, for the good of the people. And they do this here, and things turn out in a certain way, and then they turn the scouts into the bad guys. They hunt them down, they want to kill them all, and eventually they finally lose the entire fight. The military lose, and they lose against the people and everybody else, because people figure out what they were doing, and they now overturn the government. They save Eren, and they just kill a monster Titan in the process. I'm not even going to get into details about it. They find out about the royal family. They find out a little bit more information about how things work, and that's just about it. That's where we end on that season. So that's all we found out, and now we get ready for the third season. The third season is all about the reclamation of their lost homeland. Actually, wait, I think this is the third season start that I gave with all those stories. I mixed up second and third season for some reason by accident. So, okay, third season was actually all the political stories for the start, and then they start making this push to go and reclaim the outer walls. They have all the space so they can get back to farming, their livelihoods can take back, and they can be more free about their lives. They go for it, but this is like a really painful one. They lead an army of about 150 or 200 soldiers into the enemy territory because they need to plug this two sets of holes, and then everything is safe again. They can reclaim all that land. They can just kill the Titans over a year, and things will be done. So they finally make this push. They make this plan, and things go as they expected all the way till they reach the city. They've done their first part. They haven't gotten attacked as yet, so they're a little bit shocked. And then they ambushed into a trap. They realize they're stuck inside the city because they sealed their outer wall so that they didn't get more Titans entering into the fight. And the enemy has the ability to turn people into Titans instantly. So he turns this whole line of people into Titans to hold off his attack. Now, this here makes things more complicated. They now have a wall on the one side. They have three transforming Titans there against, and then there's a fourth one and a fifth one that we don't know about. A whole lot of things are going crazy. So they're trying to figure out how they're going to take this, how they're going to win in this drastic situation. So the Force then has this massive fight. It's the climax of season 3, the most important one. They have a fight. It ends up becoming very bloody. Almost all of the soldiers get killed. The 3 Titan Transformers get taken down. The Colossal, who's battled, gets taken down. The Beast, who's Zeke Yeager, who's Aaron's brother, gets taken down, and so does the other Titan, Rhina, who is the armored Titan. All 3 of them get taken down in the fight, but only one gets captured, and they end up using that one to revive one of their fallen soldiers, who ends up becoming Armin because of a whole lot of arguments that happen. There's a whole lot of stories there. I'll explain it as I go through the episode later on. And this is where things change, because they finally get all the information about what's been going on. They find out that there's an enemy nation called Mali. They were once terrorized by the Titans, and when they finally defeated the Titans, they decided they're going to launch an assault on them by using their own people who remained in the rest of the world with them to keep the people on the island locked into the island so that they can never ever rise again. And they've been using the power of the Titans for their own power, and there's a whole lot of stories going on that thread. We find out what led up to this incidents and all of these situations. That was all for the founding Titan, the Royal Titan, and that the Royal Titan can't be used by Royals properly because there's a vow of non-aggression on it at the moment from one of the previous users. It's a very strong world agreement with Titan, so the Royals can't use it. And things just progress forward. We find out that there was a threat about something called the Rumbling, which plays a very important part as we come to the next season. So those are everything that happens up to season 3. So I've accumulated the entire story so far up to this point, and then we reach season 3 where we are right now. So finally they've made progression. They've killed all of the Titans who were terrorizing them. They have all the knowledge on how to transfer the abilities, all of the various informations needed. And at this point, things progress a bit scarily. They go to the enemy nation, and we start finding out about things from the enemy side. They're training up soldiers to rectify what happened in the past. Because of their loss of 2 Titans, enemies started attacking the nation of Mali. We find out that they treat the Aldeans, who are the ones who can transform, like monsters all the time, even though not all of them are monsters. Only those who transform become monsters, and only those who transform without the power of a shifter are total monsters. So we get to learn all of these little things. We learn a lot more about the cynicism and the criticism, and how the point of view of a government makes things seem right and wrong, how we shouldn't be so blind to the obvious nature of things. Like if we listen to the first part of the story, we know that those who lived on the island are both good and evil. And when we hear what they're saying about those on the island, they make them sound like the absolute monsters, that they'd kill the entire world if they had if they had it their way. That's what they want to do. But it's not the fact. We already know they just want their freedom. They want to be free. And we learn this. We see them fighting in a war. We see them use these horrible senses. Basically, they commit atrocities in war. But it's not really an atrocity. It's a fair fighting plan. They use some deadly weapons basically on each other, and that's how it goes. And it's the reality of things. That's the way things are. So at this point, your mind is already twisting and turning because you don't understand how you're seeing things. Now you're seeing things from the enemy's point of view, and you hear some of the soldiers from the Mali side saying, so this is how they killed our ancestors, and now you understand why they have this hatred for them. But you also don't understand them because they're using that same evil. They're doing the same thing that was done to them to others, and it's just so complicated at this point. Then things start to get more twisted as they win this war and they return home, and we're finding out they're going back to the island to attack them and steal the Titans. But they're planning this massive media escapade where they can march a massive army all at once on the enemy. And it doesn't work out for them because Eren ends up crashing the party. Now he's running rogue. There's a whole lot to do with why he's running rogue, and I'm not going to get into it because that's going into the episodes where we are right now. All of this happens, and there's a ton of threads going on. Now, if you read the novel or the manga, you would have a lot more information than what I just said. There's tons more, and even abbreviating it into this 30-minute video, unfortunately, wouldn't be enough. Now, when I go through the first video, I will be covering it maybe later on after this year. So I hope that you all did enjoy this. This is my first try at covering anime. I'm a massive anime fan, and doing an entire anime in one episode is crazy. But when I do it one episode at a time, I'm hoping that it becomes a little bit more condensed and a little bit more understandable, because you will get hints of future stuff, so there will always be spoilers. And I hope that you all do enjoy. See you all in the next one.